All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this morning. My name is Jonathan. I'm going to host here at the Chicago Quality Investors and founder of of Quality Builders. I always start every meetup with gratitude and praise for everyone who showed up here in person and online. Coming in on a Saturday is not something everyone is doing, but definitely. Yeah, Zach, you're the one person. I'm so glad you're here. It's been a long time for you to show up. So thank you to Zach, everyone else, especially Brie, for getting up on a Saturday morning. For all you guys online, appreciate you guys tuning in as well. I'm also super grateful always for our host, Imran Khan. Want to do a brief introduction and give us some insights on you? Yeah, there you go.
Thank you, Bridget.
Yeah.
Thank you, John, always for a couple of years, always vouching for me. I appreciate you and your loyalty and everything. Guys, I'm Imran. I am a real estate attorney here in Chicago. Our primarily focus is our national title company. We're in 31 states. We are focused mostly on commercial real estate. In Illinois market, we're doing a lot of residential. We have 117 people, offices from Spokane, Washington, down to Tampa to Plano, Texas. Love to be your quarterback on title insurance work. My particular passion is commercial real estate. That's my career-wise, and on my investment side, I have a portfolio of apartments and retail, and we are looking to fund projects as well and find strategic partners. If you guys have questions, let me know. And thank you guys for allowing me to speak.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Imran. Yeah, our goal here is always to help everyone on their next step. I always like to think in your most important next step. We're all kind of on the same journey here, looking to get in real estate, already thriving in real estate. So there's more than likely someone in the room that can help you get to where you're going. So I'm always encouraging everyone to get comfortable being uncomfortable and talking to people you don't know. I always also encourage everyone to scan that QR code that's back there on the board of directors for the Boys and Girls Club. So if you don't mind giving a little donation, it goes to their Youth of the Year program, which is coming up in October. 3 people from the True Value Boys and Girls Club in Little Village, they go and give a speech, and then one of them gets selected to go to Navy Pier and give a even bigger presentation. So if you can and you're able, scan that QR code, give a little donation. I'll be super appreciative of that. The last thing I always do is I try to figure out a way that I can help someone in the room. And I know for me, I'm much better at starting things than finishing things. And I was going to pick on this guy right here, Jalen. What's up, Jalen? And can you tell us what you need to finish, most importantly, for your next step in real estate?
Getting my real estate license.
Bingo. So he's going to take his test very soon. He's going to come connect with Brie, maybe to get his agent, hold his license with her. So I got this book. It's called Finish. Hopefully it helps you finish your real estate exam coming up. So I'll give that to you afterwards. But yeah, appreciate you sharing and being vulnerable. Super happy to have Brie here. She's probably one of the original gangsters of Chicago real estate industry, at least from the people I know. She scaled her real estate portfolio faster than anyone that I know here in Chicago and in Milwaukee. She's the managing broker for Second City Real Estate. They've done over $130 million since 2020. And she also founded the Midwest Real Estate Summit, which is, I think, maybe how we originally met. And so that was an amazing thing that they're doing. Maybe unlikely not doing it anymore. But yeah, and probably most importantly, now she's doing everything she's doing as a mother of two
small children.
It's 2 small
Super
children.
fun. I've been up since 3 this morning.
How has your life changed? As this wasn't a topic I was going to ask, but like since you've had your kids, how has that kind of changed the trajectory of your day-to-day life working as an investor and as a broker?
That's a really good question. Uh, so I'm extremely blessed that I got into this business before I had kids. Because I spent, 7, 8 years scaling my business to where it is, so that when I had children, I have the ability to be completely flexible. So I have the ability from my investments and from my business to fund our household. So my husband doesn't work; he's a stay-at-home dad, which really helps because a lot of times with my job, a property said yesterday morning, he's like, "What do you got going on today?" I'm like, "Nothing really. Got some paperwork, some errands to run." And next thing you know, it's like, "Hey, I got to leave at 4. I've got 2 showings that just came on the market." And I'm running numbers till 7 o'clock at night. I was sending over offers this morning before I came here. Like, he needs to handle the kids so that I can get that stuff done because it all comes up very fast. So that's been a huge blessing. Also the ability to have time with our children. I usually take off work afternoon. So I start work at 5 o'clock in the morning. Typically, I'm done for the day around noon, unless I absolutely have to. I don't take phone calls afternoon unless it's an emergency or it's a last minute showing. And the only option is that, so that we can spend our afternoons with our kids. But who here does not have children? Raise your hands. Who here wants children? Okay, you should earmuffs this, right? It's fucking hard, right? Like, you have absolutely no control over your life. Like I said, like last night, my son was up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I couldn't get him back down till like 3:30. I'm tired. And then he was up at 4 o'clock in the morning screaming at me for crackers. I'm like, motherfucker, like, take your fucking crackers. So like, I'm downstairs with him at 4:30 in the morning feeding this kid crackers. I'm like, and I got to put him to bed again. And then he was up at 6 and he wants to go ride his motorcycle. We got a new like a little kid motorcycle. I'm like, it's 6 o'clock in the morning, kid. Like, I'm tired. And like, I have things I need to do today. I have to be on the ball. I've got to, I've got showings today. I've got to run numbers on properties. I've got to talk to you guys. Like, I'd really rather be sleeping. And that's the hard part about being a parent, is that you have absolutely no control if your kid's sick. Like, my daughter was sick on Monday. I had to take the whole day off work last minute. So having a job that's flexible like I do has been a real blessing. So I can be there with my kids and not stick them in daycare all day long. So that's what's really changed is, also your tolerance for BS, really. A lot of things there's more important things nowadays. And so I like to focus my time on what's important, right? And just let go of the small things that aren't really necessary and just move on with life.
Yeah, I think your time gets much more condensed
Absolutely.
with children. So yeah, backing up pre-children.
Yeah.
Where were you originally working? How did you find real estate, and what made you kind of jump into it?
The interesting story. So I used to work in corporate. I worked in corporate sales for almost 10 years. I loved my job. I traveled all over the country. I worked 60 hours a week. I wanted to be a top corporate executive. Like, that's what I wanted. And my then husband or fiance and I were looking for, we were going to get married and talking about life plans. Like, what do you do when you're an adult, right? You buy a place to live. We're looking at condos. I'm like, none of these are really speaking to me. So we decided to house hack, which is using a low money down program. We did FHA. I think we had like $12,000 and, used our entire savings to buy a 3-unit in Albany Park, live in 1 unit, rent out the other units. And the plan was to eventually just convert that to a single family. As we needed more space, we would rework the layout. We would remove a wall, right? We've got 2 floors. And then as we needed more space, we can make it a 3-story single family house. And that was going to be our forever house. A few months after we bought the house, my father was diagnosed with a very aggressive form of cancer. And so he ended up passing away within 9 months and just after our wedding. And the day he ended up dying the day before he was supposed to retire. So his like entire life, he kept saying like, I'll retire after you get married, and I'll retire after your brother finishes grad school. And when I retire, I'm going to go here and we're going to go do this and we're going to go see this. And it's gone. Nothing. He didn't get to do anything, and it really shook me to the absolute core of like, crap, I'm in this corporate job. I'm in my late 20s. I've got 30 more years of work to do before I can retire. And what if I'm in that same situation? Because I wanted to go do all those things that he wanted to do. And I've got my crappy 2-week vacation that my boss is like, well, you can't take 2 weeks at the same time, right? Like, or, next time you can go is in 6 months. Like, that's not the life I want to live. That is not what we're doing here. So I really sat down with my fiance or my husband then and said, how can we adjust our lives now? Because this is not what I want to have happen to me in 30 years. And so we talked about going back to school and maybe becoming coders, like something we could
Mhm.
do and be digital nomads, like something with flexibility. Talk about real estate. We talked about all these different things. And like, I always had a passion for real estate. I've been licensed actually since 2004. I just never used my license as an agent because I didn't like the retail side of things. I'm like, well, we've had this property for a year now. Like, let's just buy another one. So that was the plan, was we bought 2 more properties in the next 6 months. And we were going to just aggressively, we were going to continue to work our W-2 jobs, pay on our mortgages, maybe acquire a few more. And then around like 45, 50, we could have paid off properties. We could then, quit our jobs and then have early retirement. And then I was Googling a zoning question. I remember, who here works corporate? Remember like the week of Thanksgiving, like nothing's going on the week of Thanksgiving, right?
Shuts
Like
down.
you're in the office because you don't want to take PTO, but no one's actually doing work. And I was Googling a zoning question and I found an answer on this website called Bigger Pockets.
Mm.
And I just spent my entire work week like, oh my God, there's all these people that are talking about real estate, which is what I love to talk about. I had never read a book. I'd never talked to other investors. I had never gone, I'd owned 3 properties at that point, never gone to a meetup, never knew this whole world existed. And I went down the rabbit hole so fast. I mean, seriously, like I spent probably 60 hours that first week, like reading and talking to people and like, this is my people. Within 6 months of finding Bigger Pockets, my whole world completely changed over. And I always try to make sure that my investing was a side business and that it never got in the way of my corporate job. And all of a sudden, my corporate job was getting in the way of my investing. And I gave them notice, and so that was Thanksgiving. I gave them notice in May. My last day was, I think, end of June.
What
And
year? What year?
The 2014.
Okay.
And just decided like I have to quit my corporate job and go to real estate full time. So I ended up buying like 18 properties the next 9 months and then another 10 properties the 9 months after that. So I went from 2 years, I had 8 units, and then 2 years later, I had like 96 units. So like I went like all in crazy town, but I loved it. Like I found my passion. I would wake up at like 3 o'clock in the morning. My husband's like, what are you doing? I'm like running numbers on properties. It's like, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, dude. You're like in Excel. I'm like, I can't sleep. I can't sleep about these properties. Like really became obsessed with it. So now I'm much more chill. But I still love it. So then since then I've started my own brokerage company, right? We've started the conference event. It's still, even just last night, I had a client apologize to me. We just had our 3rd really complicated deal fall through, not by his fault or anything like that. And he's like, I feel so bad because you're doing all this work and consulting and all this. Like, but I love it. Like, this is not work for me. Like, this is not a job. Like, I get to wake up every single day. I run numbers on properties. I get to talk strategy, right? Like, this is what I love to do. It's been 10 years and still like every morning I get very excited about it. So that's my story.
That's awesome. So 8 to 78, 88 units?
96.
96 units in 2 years. That's just crazy fast.
It was really stressful. A lot of it was in Milwaukee. I was driving to and from Milwaukee, typically every week, I was doing acquisitions. I was doing all the accounting. I had an in-house property manager that I had to train. One of the really shitty things about Milwaukee, they changed it, is when you buy a property on your title is a fee. You have to pay the city to come do an exterior inspection and they can give you violations. So that's really fun.
Yeah.
So within 30 days of owning a property, the city comes out and gives you lists of things that you need to do. So we're buying 5 properties at a time, which was generally anywhere from like 15 to 20 units at a time. We've got like tenants moving out in the middle of the night, right? We're trying to learn like who's got the leases, right? Like what's going on, like what are outstanding repairs. And then the city comes and gives you a whole bucket list of things that you need to do, regrade properties, repaint, like re-roof. So it was quite chaotic for that year and a half. And that's why I meant like, I'm so glad I did not have children because I couldn't,
Yeah,
there's no way I had the mental capacity or energy. And now the building is, everything's systemized, right? Everything's run properly. I've had much more experience on how to deal with things. So my stress level with it, I've already been through the burnt down buildings, right? I've already been through the massive bed bug infestations and having to tent the entire building and vacate it. We actually had to pay someone to go sleep in our building overnight to make sure they didn't get bed bugs because it was so bad.
Oh,
I'm not even kidding. Like I've been through it all, right? I've had people burn down my garage, like crazy stuff. Like, So now it's just like, whatever.
So if you had to go
You know?
back before that time, what are the top 3 things you do differently to scale even faster than
I
you did?
wouldn't.
Yeah.
I wouldn't. We probably at the end of the day, we probably lost, I would guess, anywhere probably between $25,000 and $50,000 just in mistakes
Mm.
because we were going so fast. You know, had things been systemized and in place and we had gone slower, we would have made less mistakes, which would have cost less money. I didn't need to go that fast, and in hindsight, right? But am I glad I did it? Yes, it was an absolute learning lesson. That's life, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend going that fast.
Well, so what would be the top 3 things you would have put in place to not lose the money that you did lose?
I think a lot of it was just lack of experience. You know, you've been in this business for so long, right? Like, remember your first couple years, it's like being in your 20s, right? If you're in your 20s, you think you know everything. I think I knew everything in my 20s. I knew what I was going to do with my life. I was smart, right? Once you get to like your late 30s, early 40s, you look back in your 20s, like, dude, I was stupid. Like, I knew nothing. And like, that's just life, right? Same thing with, your career. Back in the beginning, like, I thought I read all the books, I listened to all the podcasts, right? I thought I knew what I was doing. And now, 10 years later, looking back, it's like, well, wasn't that smart.
Yeah.
So like really just, I think one of the biggest mistakes I made at the time I thought it was genius was I had my own in-house property management team. I did not want to hire a third party. I wanted complete control over property management. And I hired someone who was actually the owner of one of the first buildings that I bought. He was already managing the buildings for his family. So he was fantastic with the tenants. He had good contractors, right? Like, we would walk into a building and he was like, oh, how was so-and-so's soccer game the other day? Like, he knew people. He was a good people person. He had good prices, like really ran the renovations fantastically. Problem was he had nothing to do with accounting. So like he would just go deposit. I'm not even kidding, like 15 grand of cash in my account. I'm like, what's this? He's like, oh, I've got the receipts in my pocket. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, he had handwritten receipts. So like once a month, I would literally drive up to Milwaukee. I would get all the receipts from him. I'd grab a bottle of wine and go to my hotel and then do the accounting. That's what we did for like a year because he had I'm like, hey, so-and-so wasn't paid rent for 2 months. And he was like, oh, I didn't notice, like, should probably call them, like he was not good on that side. And that made me realize a very important lesson in life that you're not supposed to be good at everything, right? Nobody should be good at everything, especially with property management. There's 10 different pieces of that puzzle, right? That have to kind of all come together for effective property management. And one person should not be doing that. Same thing with being a real estate agent, right? I can't be driving to Naperville and looking at single family houses with someone, right? When then I've got to be in the city. Like, it's too much. I focus on a very small area. I only do apartment buildings generally, right? Like, I do 3 things well, and that's all I do. Anything outside of my area of expertise, I refer out. And that's what I learned from that lesson. So I had to hire a professional property management company that had people that were in their skill sets with different departments, and it was all siloed, right? And they all came together as a team. Like, that's how it should be run. One person cannot do that all.
Yeah. Focus
Yeah.
on one thing, I think, is the most important thing any of us can do.
Yeah.
I know that was my biggest problem too, of like trying to
Especially as a small business owner.
Oh yeah. Of course. It's really hard to run a business and be an investor at the same time. That's what I found, right? That's why I said I'm done investing. I want to focus on my business because it's just.
But even within your business, there's marketing, there's accounting, right? Someone's got to talk with the client management, right? It's like someone's got to have the relation. Like, it's a multi-part business. And so like even in my agent business, like, I outsource things that I'm terrible at. It took me a long time to really learn that. Like, I suck at marketing, terrible. Like, if we ever came to our real estate summit, my partner, John Casman, he's the marketing person. Like, he's always sending me stuff like, how does this look? I'm like, I don't care. I don't know. You do that part. I do this part, right? Like, that's how this relationship works with partners because I'm not good at it,
What's your recommendation for people finding the right partner?
That's a good question too. There was a big joke. I think it was the first summit or the second summit. So I've got also invested with partners in Milwaukee. I have 3 business partners up there. They're all individual relationships. So like, me and you are a partner, me and you are a partner, me and you are a partner. The partners don't know each other, right? I wanted that. I didn't want to do any sort of like mass syndication or anything like that. I just wanted one-on-one relationships to have, we can kind of do our own thing, right? So I called it courting, which was, I wanted, when they approached me about being potential partners, I told them I wasn't ready to work with them, but I wanted to kind of court them. So as I was doing my own acquisitions, my own portfolio, every couple of weeks, I would send them a summary. Like, hey, here's the properties I saw, here's the links, right? Here's the numbers I ran, here's why I ran the numbers this way, here's the properties I passed on and why I passed on them, right? Also, they could get to know me. And then even when we were acquiring properties, I would give them like a monthly summary of, here we had 3 tenants leave in the middle of the night. Like, here's what we're doing. Here's the problems. Like, so that they got to know me and my ability to make decisions and trusted me. And it took about a year before I was ready to work with them. And then it was really seamless because they knew everything about me. They knew my style. They knew my decision making, right? It's been almost 10 years since we've been working together. And like, they maybe ask like 1 or 2 questions a year. They let me run the show because they completely trust me. So allowing that courting period was really important to me. And then the joke is I met my husband and we moved in after 6 weeks and got married 6 months later. So they're like, you work, but you make your business partners take longer than your own marriage, but 7-year anniversary is coming up. So it worked out. But that's how like I felt comfortable doing it, because taking on someone else's money is an extreme level of responsibility.
So
Like-
you sent them all the information before you even considered
Oh yeah.
partnering with them. They might have actually wanted to partner with you before you had even done all that stuff.
They had all reached out to me about partnering. So I'd like, hey, I've been watching what you're doing. I want to, invest with you. And it was more like a diary. Like I would journal to them, like what my challenges were, like when I was at, like, so that they got to know me. And it's been a really awesome relationship ever since. I'm really, really glad I did it that way, because anyone can come to you with money. Right. And I've heard so many situations and had so many investors who have had to, who've, lost tens of thousands of dollars because the relationship went sour. So there was another investor in the Milwaukee market where, they were seeing great returns, right? They were just really just sourcing out capital. Hey, you've got 20 grand. Let's, come and be my partner. Did absolutely no vetting or relationship building on that end. And so what happened was he had a few relationships go sour because he tried to sell me the properties, but they had, I can't think of the word right now, mom brain, commercial loans where you, sell them early or you refinance or close them out early. What's that called? The 3 points. Prepayment penalty.
Oh.
Thank you. They had like $80,000 prepayment penalties.
Oh,
And he's like, I need someone to take over this loan. Otherwise, we've got an $80,000 payment penalty because the relationship has gone sour and it's getting litigious and we have no other option. And they couldn't sell the portfolio with someone taking over the loan. So they had to pay like $80,000 of prepayment penalties, and that whole relationship went south, and it ended up getting litigious. Like those things happen. And they're like, at the end of the day, it's like, I wish I would have vetted people that I'm working with.
yeah, that's genius. Creating a diary and sending it to people that you might want to have invest with you. Just, I don't know. I've never heard of anyone doing that before.
I even do it in my brokerage side of things.
Yeah.
When someone wants to come, I just had a call this week, some California investor said, hey, I want to invest in the Chicago market. Will you be my agent? I'm like, sure, let's have a discussion about it. Here's examples of properties. Here's properties that I've seen. I've run numbers on. I want you to look at them, right? And let's have a discussion about the cap rate, right? The cash flow, like answer your questions. And at the end of the day, it turned out I'm like, this is not the right move for you. It's actually going to be, you're going to be in the hole with your plan. Like Chicago's probably not the best market for you. Like it's, but I was able to show things with examples, explain to her, like talk through actual properties, because people have very unrealistic expectations, especially with like renovations, like, oh yeah, just, that's a $10,000 cosmetic job. I'm like, no,
I've never
Chicago,
before.
water service, dig downs, permits, right? Architectural drawings, zoning, right? Like this is a $300,000 job. And they're like, whoa, 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 so like having those conversations with people and talking through actual examples and experiences, right, is what's going to help everyone.
Backing up really quick too, you said those original partners that invested with you, that they found you.
Yeah.
What were you doing that allowed you to be seen and have people come to you opposed to you having to go to people?
Yeah, they all 3 of them, I had never met them before. They all really just 2 of them emailed me. out of the blue and said, hey, my name is so-and-so, and I've been following what you're doing, and I want to give you money. I was just telling Zach, like, my one business partner gave me $500,000. I never met him.
And
We
he
had one
fo-
Zoom call.
But he found you through like
Bigger Pockets.
Bigger
Just
Pockets.
being active on Bigger Pockets, answering questions, right? And then he's like, well, let's do another $500,000. I'm like, we should probably meet. Like I should probably fly out to LA. And he's like, come stay at my house for the weekend and on the beach. I'm like, sure. And so I flew out there and met him, and we've continued to invest. But he, we had one Zoom call when he gave me $500,000.
Yeah, I need to find that guy.
The other one was at Mick was at a conference. I was speaking at a conference in San Francisco. And the guy pulled me aside and said, hey, I've been watching what you're doing. Can we talk? Can I fly out in 2 weeks? He had said, and let's, start getting to know the market, right? And can we work together?
Yeah, so I think you were Bigger Pockets guest on the actual podcast at 78. Is that right?
78 and 132, I think.
Okay. And then did that kind of jumpstart you to like go on a bunch of other things? I know you were on like, I don't know, 30 podcasts, I feel like during that time.
Yeah, I think I'm up to 60 now.
Holy cow. Yeah. So was that intentional though, or was it just by happenstance?
Just not intentional at all. But again, like I said, I used to be a normal person who could hold normal conversations with people about small things, right? Like used to go to parties and talk about Super Bowl, right? Or what was on TV last night. Like my brain does not do that anymore. If we're not talking like real estate investing, right? Like goal setting, small business stuff, like I just gloss over and I leave the party. Like I can't. It's not fun for me, right? So like my friends now are all real estate investors, people that I've met over the years. But it was all completely unintentional. They actually asked me to be a moderator because I was so obsessed with the website. I was on there like every single day. And they're like, it's been like 9 months. And I think you've not logged in one day. So why don't you become a moderator for us? And then while you're, would you mind being on the podcast? And then I also had a meetup event in Chicago. I ran the meetup event for 7 years until COVID. So like that was a big part of it. I said like my whole life became talking with other investors. Like I still love every single minute of it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things I remind myself super often is like find people who are doing what you want to do and copy what they did.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's a lot of what I've done is copy a lot of what you've done. Just be super active, look to help people first.
Absolutely.
And then like good thing, and then just surround yourself with like-minded people who want to do the same thing. And then good things seem like they just happen by happenstance, right?
Absolutely. And we're really lucky. I think the Chicago investor community is absolutely fabulous. And I love it because everyone's here to help each other, right? Everyone's friends. Even just, I had a question that I needed someone that has done development effort stuff. So I ended up texting this guy who I've known for probably 10 years. I haven't talked to him like in 2 years. I was just like, hey, I got a quick question. Will you give me a call? And like 2 hours later, we're still catching up on the phone, and it was like, I hang up the phone. And I'm like, man, it was so good talking to him. Like even just like catching up, chit chatting, talking about real estate, what's going on, what are they developing, right? What are they building? And just like sharing, right? What's going on? Like I've got 50 different people in the Chicago land market that if I've got a question or I'm stuck with something or I need advice or I want to bounce ideas off someone, like I've got that community of people that helps me out. And I absolutely help other people out as well.
Yeah, I think I can openly admit I've definitely met some of my best friends coming to events like this. And like you said, then you're talking about the same things all the time and literally trying to help each other get to the same place. So yeah, it's what is the saying? You can go fast alone or far together.
Yeah.
So switching the subject just a tiny bit. What do you think about the new legal buyer commission structure that has been put in place, how that's going to work? Maybe you can explain a little bit because I honestly don't know enough about it yet to talk about it, and I'm hoping maybe you do.
Well, I kind of have to. So the way I'm a managing broker, which means I've got licensees underneath me. I've got a small team of 8 agents. We're all investor agents. So if they screw up, I get sued. Right. It's like that's my responsibility is to train them and make sure that they understand. So I've had to do a lot of research on this. But the changes that took effect, which was August 17th, are part of a settlement that is not approved yet. So the settlement isn't approved. We don't have court until I think November to actually finalize the terms of this. They just chose to do it early so that when we went to court, we were able to show that, things are changing. There's a couple main components of it. First, every showing has to have a contract with a broker. We cannot do any sort of showings anymore, open houses even, without having some sort of agreement. So it depends on your agent, right? How they want to structure those agreements. I've got a few different options for my clients. But for example, I had someone the other day who wanted to see a property. They're, a passive investor. So I was cool just doing a brokerage agreement for that property. They don't buy that property, right? Our relationship is terminated, right? Some are more open-ended, right? Some are for the next 6 months, whatever. But agents cannot show properties anymore without having some sort of agreement in place. The other part of it is that previously, right, when I would go to a listing appointment, I would tell a seller that my fee is X amount of dollars, right? Let's just say 5%. And I'm taking 2.5% of that, and then 2.5% goes to the buyer's agent. And that was always posted on the MLS. So the way that our contracts were written was that it was assumed, right? You never had to pay a buyer's agent commission. It was never a law. It was never a part of our code, right? It was never a requirement for the seller to pay a buyer's agent commission. But the way that our contracts were worded made it seem like it was. It was just assumed. There was no opt-out. There was no disclosure. There was no, this is optional, right? It was just that here's the fee and here's what I'm paying someone else. So that's kind of what part of the lawsuit was like, they were getting sued because they didn't know that they had the option to not pay the buyer's agent's fee. Now, that being said, even with the changes, sellers can still pay the buyer's agent's fees. So far, it's been like a month since this has happened. I have not seen a single listing that the seller is not willing to pay a buyer's agent's fee. It cannot be communicated on the MLS. I actually went to a showing last night. I should get it from my car. I went to a showing last night, and the guy handed my client the info sheet, right? And then he handed me the info sheet, and then he kind of like slipped me like a 20, like you would slip a valet, right? And I opened the paper and it says 2.5% co-op in like 110.5. Seriously, I've got a picture out on my phone. Like he was like trying to be secretive. I'm like, you don't need it. You legally can do this. But like, that's how it was now, he's like, we're offering a co-op. Sellers also have the option of not doing it. So I have a listing currently where my agreement is to pay me. There's no agreement to pay the buyer's agent commission. He's willing to pay a buyer's agent commission, but he does not know what amount. So he wants to see how the offers come in and decide and negotiate directly with the agent based on the terms of his offer. And that is also something that we're seeing a lot more of too, where the seller doesn't want to, he's not going to say, I'm going to pay 2.5%. But he will say, like, depending on your offer, I will pay 2.5%, or I might try to negotiate that to 2%, right? If you're going to lowball me, I'm going to lowball you. But now there's that piece of the puzzle, that functionality, which we did not have before, because it was always kind of just set. So we're starting to see that a little bit. But I would say 80% of the listings so far, the seller has already agreed to a full buyer's agent commission. Now, the other thing is the agreements that you're signing with us to go see properties include a commission. So you're agreeing before you see any properties that you're going to pay me 2.5%. And you don't know if that seller is going to cover it or not, typically until we go to the showing. So if they pay me, then you owe me nothing. But if they only offer me 2, then you owe me half.
Do we know how that's going to shake out yet? Are
No.
the buyers going to pay that split, or
they will? Yeah,
realtor's going to be stuck not getting it potentially if they don't want to?
From my understanding, it's going to be on the closing statement, settlement statement. It's going to be a line item. I know that there are legal services in place to go after buyers through our associations, as well as some of the contracts have mediation agreements in them. That if you don't agree with something, we have to go through mediation first. So like those are all covered now. But like honestly, so like I've had a few that have come up. It's like we're gonna pay, my contract with you says 2.5. The seller's offering 2, right? I'm just gonna modify our contract to 2.
Okay.
Like I'm not
working too.
Like I'm really not gonna be an asshole over 0.5%, right? But like I can't say that till we're in it.
Yeah.
And then we can just do a simple contract modification.
Yeah, so that makes sense. And so basically everything needs to be in writing.
Absolutely.
My takeaway. The seller is not obligated to pay the buyer's
Never have
commission,
been, though.
and the buyer now has to have that contract with the buyer's agent needs to have the contract with the buyer to say that they're actually going to represent them, and here's the commission we're going to charge at the
Yeah.
closing table.
And then on the sell side, like most sellers are, it's hard to say, but like the way I explain to my clients is now I'll present offers to you, not to seller, right? So if you want to make an offer on one of my properties, right, and you're offering list price, and you want a $20,000 commission, but you are offering $30,000 under list price with no commission, right? The net to you is still higher with your offer paying commission. It's like now I just need to do more math to my sellers and essentially like aggregate everything. So I'm presenting the offers to my clients, right, as what's their net so that they can make the decision.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how things play out. Probably like anything else, things will kind of normalize. There'll be a new standard and things will get simpler. I feel like it feels a little complicated right now,
does.
but I think like anything else, change seems to feel complicated and then it becomes normal pretty quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you I've had 2 new listings since this all went down, and every single phone call I get about the listing is what's the co-op?
Yeah, interesting.
Because you can still have it, right? You can still tell someone. It just can't be listed on the MLS. That's the first question that everyone asks.
So with all that change, I know interest rates have kind of slowly been kind of declining. We're still in low inventory. What are you kind of telling your clients in general about what's happening in the next 6 months, year, 2 years in Chicago market?
Much time I got? 2 different things going on here, right? Interest rates have really killed the ability for most investors the last 2 years, right? I would say like about half of my clients that I had said, no, we're sitting on the fence. We're not going to be buying anymore, right? The rates are too high. The numbers don't work. We're taking off. The other half decided to continue looking for properties, but decided that, we're confident that rates are going to be lower at some point. So we're going to buy on cap rate. We're going to buy on the overall return, knowing that we can refinance later and get better cash flow. So there's been that split, right? Up until about December of, what year is this? December 2023, right? Like that was the mindset. All of a sudden, like in December, when the new 5% down program came out for house hackers, a lot of people started coming out of the woodwork and say like, okay. And they got, I think, more confidence that there was like rates would go lower. So they were now coming out of the woodwork, coming back after a year or two and saying like, okay, now I think we're ready. Because even if it doesn't cash flow like we want it right now, we're still confident that rates can go down. Now, I am not a smart person when it comes to rates. Like I'm not an economist. There's people that are way smarter than me. Like I think this is all their plan in the first place, to be honest. Rates were super low too. My house is at 2%. My investment properties are at 3%, right? Like it was like free money. I think they really wanted us. They wanted to raise rates to like high fives, right? 5.75, 6%. But they thought if we go from 3 to 6, right, people are going to be mad and they're going to be like, oh, this is terrible. We're not going to buy anything. But if we go from 3 to 8, right, and then we go down to 6, people are going to be happy.
That's a pretty
which is true
process.
Like look at us now. Rates are like just hitting 6%. We're like, this is glorious. Let's start buying properties, right? If we'd been at 6 for the last year, there'd be like there would been a lot of pushback. But now it's not 8. Right? That's the thinking now. Well, it's better than 8. We might as well buy. I think that was their whole plan. That's my uneducated opinion of it. But that being said, inventory is a completely separate thing. So it's also been a really weird, typically the investor, I do 2 to 4 units in Chicago. Typically our market is very much like a bell curve, and it has to do with like lease ups, right? No one leases up in winter. It's really hard to sell a building that's completely leased because then your only option is non-owner occupied, which is about 10% of the market. 90% of the market is going to be owner occupied buyers. You have to have 1 unit available, at least in the next 60 days, for an owner occupied buyer. So because we don't lease up in winter, our market really is Memorial Day to Labor Day. I would say 80% of our business the last 10 years has been between Memorial Day and Labor Day, right? From Halloween to St. Patrick's Day, like I'm off work, Typically, like summer months, I'm doing 10, 15 showings a week. Winter months, maybe 1 or 2 a month. It's that drastic of a difference. But then things just like I remember it was May 2022, things fell off a cliff. Like it was the craziest thing. And since then, it's been a really wonky market. This past January and February, for like 6 weeks, I have not been that busy as an agent ever. I'm not even kidding. I was working from 5 o'clock in the morning till like 7 o'clock at night for 6 weeks straight, no days off, just to not drop the ball. Like that was just keeping up with what was going on. I was incredibly busy. I made more money in that 6 week period than I did the whole last half of the previous year. Right. Like, and then it was nothing. It was completely dead. Right. And then like the first week of July, we also got like a big burst. I had like 5 properties go under contract in July. Nothing since. Of course, I'm going on vacation next week. So of course, everything just comes up right now. I think I've had like 8 showings this week so far. I've got like another 6 scheduled this weekend. Like Charlie's covering things while I'm here doing this. I might have 4 inspections next week. And I'm like, where did this come from? I've had 2 showings like the entire month of August, and nothing under contract. And now all of a sudden, like that's been the market. It's been coming in bursts. And then it dies down for like 2-3 months. So now it's becoming a lot harder to predict.
Sounds like life seasons, right? I mean, everything, when it's raining, it's pouring. When things are great, everything's growing. So yeah, I think that's a pretty good analogy for life and how things come at us. And we need to, right, take advantage when we can.
Absolutely.
And then know that we're going to have some downtime in the future. So I think that's a super good nugget for everyone to keep in mind is, you got to eat while there's food.
Yeah.
Because at some point there's not going to be as much food to eat.
Yeah. I mean, that's what happens, right? And like I said, like you can't predict inventory. I can tell you like this week alone, I found 8 properties, 4 off market for my clients. Some of the best options I've seen probably in like the last 9 months. And they all came up at like 1 week, and then it said like, we've had nothing since like mid-July.
Yeah. It's wild how cyclical things can come and go. I want to give anyone out in the crowd here a chance to ask a couple questions.
I've got like 3 minutes.
3 minutes.
Yeah.
How did you operationalize and capitalize the scaling of, let's just say, roughly 90 units in a 2-year span? There must have been some framework for you to both source and execute on acquisitions as well as capitalize to achieve scale that fast. I'm curious how you did that.
Through mistakes. I said like I thought having an in-house property management team for operations was the right thing. And after about 1.5 years, realized that was a huge mistake. And again, we lost capital on it. But a lot of it is just through learning and processes. One of the things I did with my property manager that was a little bit different was I incentivized him on placements. So we would pay him a bonus for everyone that renewed, versus paying him a lease up units. Cause I'm like, that's part of your job. Right. So like being able to incentivize with the carrot, not the stick. Right. And have some sort of flexibility with that. But a lot of it was just through reading, learning, and adjusting.
You must have had a formalized buy box, right? And then a sourcing strategy where if a deal came up that met your underwriting criteria, boom, let's go.
Yeah. But it all just came through learning, really, just, seeing enough properties, walking enough properties where like it got to the point where I could walk in a property and you can still do it to this day. I can walk in a property in 5 minutes, tell you if you can buy it or not. Like it's all just through repetition and learning, even as an agent, I tell my clients like they're trying to learn from me, right? I'm trying to teach them, but things like even running comps, how to estimate rehab costs, right? I'm like, I've literally run numbers on every single property from Pilsen to Jefferson Park to Evanston every single day for 13 years. Every morning I run numbers on every single property that comes up for 13 years. It is all like, so much of it is in my head now that it's so hard for me to like teach you how to do it, right? Like, and explain it. Like it's all really an intuition. And that's how I've really run my business in general is if it feels right, I do it. If it doesn't feel right, I don't. Like there's numbers and there's spreadsheets and there's formulas and calculations, right? At the end of the day, like I've gone against those things because it felt right. Right. Or I've not bought something that was within my parameters because it didn't feel right. And that's just how I've led my business in general.
Anything else? Got 1 minute.
Yeah.
You get funding for those 96 units, since you said you left your corporate job.
Yeah.
And then like how do most people use their corporate job
To fund things.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
how do you feel about that?
So the first, I bought a property in Chicago. And I bought another property in Chicago. And the third one we bought was a 1970s single family house that we lived in and renovated it. So we were able to do a cash out refinance on that property. And then we put a HELOC as well on that property. And that's what funded the first majority of Milwaukee properties. The other half was from my brother, who trusted me, thank God, and put a loan on his house and gave me the capital. And I had a schedule with him. I was going to pay his mortgage, because he didn't have a mortgage. He owned his house free and clear, and he just willingly gave me like $150,000. And then I had to pay him back within a certain amount of time. So like that was our agreement, to help fund the second half, and then the rest of it was through partnerships.
Last question.
You mentioned partnerships and you talked about how to get like investor partnerships, but how do you vet, not like for like property management, construction and all that for vetting those types of partnerships?
It's tough, right? We were just talking about this earlier too. You get a guy that's good on the construction side of things, right? They're good, they're fast, right? They're in and out, but then they start getting to be too good, where they're too big, and then they don't want to do your small projects, right? And then they only want the big stuff, and then you got to start and find someone new, right? So there's like that progression of someone, right? A lot of it comes through referrals as well. Like I keep a contractor list for my clients to send out, like, hey, if you need this, I got this. I only put people on my list that like I've reputation, right? I've either worked with or had, good feedback up. I just took my painter off the list because I just had 2 clients tell me like, hey, he flaked on me, or like, he really, I'm like, I worked with him for 6 years. And I'm like off the list, right? If you want to screw around, like, I'm not going to refer you out, right? So that's hard. A lot of it's referral based, right? Asking around, like even stuff I don't have. Like last year, I didn't have a flat roof guy. I asked Tom Shellcross, do you have a flat roof guy? He's like, I got a solid guy. He came, did my roof. He's done 2 of my clients' roofs, and they're like, this guy's amazing. I'm like, now I got a good flat roof guy, right? I didn't have one for like 8 years. Like, so like, it's really like, we're relying on your network, right? Your network is your net worth. Is that the saying? Relying on those people, right? If you maintain relationships with people, like I just did a renovation of one of my units. I used a referral from John Warren, and so I've never met the guy. He just came and did a $30,000 renovation on my unit in like 6 days. But like John's word is solid. So if John says he's solid, he's solid. I told the guy, like, John's one of my friends, like, so he's like, make sure you do a good job. And he doesn't want to ruin that. He doesn't want to tarnish that relationship with John either.
Yeah.
So he's going to make sure he does a good job. What was the other one about partners?
I think you answered it.
It's really a feeling, and you're going to get screwed, right? We're all going to get screwed.
Yeah.
We all make bad judgment calls. It's going to happen. You just got to really like learn from your mistakes. And this is all really a learning experience. There's no book you can read and in 60 days be an experienced real estate investor. There's no book you can read to estimate renovation costs, because it's all variable. Like it's impossible. Like you can only learn through experience, and experience, you're going to make mistakes. You just really, really hope those mistakes don't cost you tens of thousands of dollars, and you hope they cost you hundreds of dollars.
Yeah, I think one of the things I listen to a podcast is like, how do you limit your downside, as much as possible? So that's something I'm always focused on.
You're trying it. You can try.
Yeah. When I mean, if you have a detrimental downside, it's going to hurt drastically. But I think, you'll see like everyone's had that type of stuff too. And anyone who survives and is persistent long enough is going to be successful. I think it's not a if, it's a when. So
it's part of the experience.
Yeah.
Right. It's part of the job. I'm sure you've made mistakes,
probably more than most people,
but then you learn from them, right?
Of course.
Said I've made a million mistakes. Like there's nothing you can do to be 100% perfect in this business. There's too many moving parts. There's too many variables. You're going to make mistakes. It's going to cost you money. Take it as a learning lesson, right? Take it as your college tuition, right? And move on. Do better next time. Simple as that.
All right. Love it. I know you got nap time coming up, so we got to let you go. Best way for people to get a hold of you in case they got 500,000, they want to come and invest with you again.
I'm usually on Bigger Pockets. under there. Or email is usually easier, chicagobrie@gmail.com.
All right. Yeah. My name is Jonathan again. And I just remind everyone again, if you can invite people to our meetup, if you get some value out of it, please do so and just continue to get comfortable being uncomfortable. Thank you everyone for coming. Thank you so much, Brie,
Yeah,
for
thanks.
coming in. All right. That's it.